become cardiologist. That's a long journey. 6 plus 5.5, or 11.5 is the bare minimum that you would spend becoming a super specialist doctor. So you see your father working as a doctor, your mother working as a doctor. It's a natural course that the only option that you have would be a doctor. The expectations were very, very high.
Going into the family business, I noticed you also have your MBA. Your wife has her own business as well.
She's one of the most popular doctor in the country. Parents who come with their babies and then they're expressing their gratitude towards her. I always tell my kids, do what you love to do. The day you decide that the communication is not intact or the communication is not direct, that's when a lot of family business collapse.
The first time it was in Dubai. We couldn't pick a better place to meet at the Burj Al Arab, a 6-star hotel. I think I had to put down a $20,000 deposit just on the iPad in the room. It was 24 karat gold. Great experience, and it was great to meet you there.
You're starting a new business, do it yourself, learn it yourself, be involved into it. And I didn't do that, so that's a big lesson. I would have the right connections, the right network, the right understanding of how a business should be.
Today, I have a very special guest. Great words of wisdom here on family, business, legacy, healthcare, and being an entrepreneur. Dr. Rajat Arora, welcome to the House of Bricks. I'd like to welcome everybody to the House of Bricks podcast, where we are teaching business leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and really people in all walks of life of how to use life's experiences for you and not carrying them with you and letting them weigh them down. And so today I have a very special guest joining us from across the world in India, and someone I've known for the last 5 or 6 years. And he has a lot of great life experience that he's going to share with us, and very excited to have him on the show. So Dr. Rajat Arora, welcome to the House of Bricks.
Thank you, Adam, for the introduction. Namaste to everyone. I'm here from Delhi. Let's share my experiences with Adam.
Well, thank you, and thanks for joining us. And so you have quite an interesting professional career, but I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about your upbringing. For those of us, in the United States, when we went to elementary, middle school, and high school, like the United States represented 80% of the global map. So educate us a little bit of just, kind of your upbringing, childhood, and a little bit about your parents and the family business.
Indians typically, the days of 70s and 80s were very different from what it is today. And those days, parents, like I am a parent today, I have 2 kids, but parents those days, did not really have time for their kids, particularly Indian parents, I would say. And, so my father decided that, my father is a doctor, and so he decided, and my mother is also a doctor, so I decided that they couldn't obviously give me appropriate time or enough time, so decided to send me to a boys' school. So that's where the whole experience started. But, the traditions and, their teachings, continued even into the school, in the boarding school. So from, I would say, the middle school and the high school, that's what we call it. We call it the standards here in India, it's STDs or the class, whatever, some people like to call it. So from the 7th to the high school, that's the 12th standard. I spent my life in Sindhya school. That's about 100 years old school started by the British at some point of time, even before the independence, India got independence. And so spent about 7 years there, and that's when I came back and decided to become a doctor.
So when you say boarding school, we obviously have those in the United States, but what is a boarding school schedule like? Or is it very privileged opportunity, or is it commonplace for kids to be able to do that?
So I wouldn't really call it a privileged opportunity, but is that obviously those days, the number of board schools in India were very, very few. And, number of people who wanted to get into were far more. So it was very, very difficult to get into. You needed the right kind of education and then being in the right extracurricular activities to be really getting into a boarding school. And boarding schools are obviously, reasonably tough those days. Their schedule, I remember we used to, the early days, we used to be awake by 5:45 and, getting ready, having a morning prep, they call it 1 hour of study at that point of time. having breakfast, limited breakfast, never has to be the kind of breakfast the kids would want today. And then school, few hours of school, back, another prep, and then, sports time. So sports was very, very integral part. And, we spend about 2 hours of sports. So, any kid, irrespective of his size or his intent or, his whatever, he had to spend 2 hours in the field, which was very, very important. If you look at today's kids, they seemingly very few kids would spend that kind of time in a sports activity today, and everybody's too busy in their phones or they're into their studies or whatever, or video games. But we, as kids, we never got a chance to do all that because we were always in the field, 2 hours of field day every day, irrespective of weekends or weekdays, and then your dinner and study. So it was a tough 6 to 7 years that I spent there.
And so you mentioned earlier in the show that your dad's a doctor. I know you're a doctor now, and you kind of mentioned you were there for 7 years, and it was like, and I want to be a doctor also. So growing up in the family business, was that something that it sounded like you wanted to get right into it? Were there other things that you considered, or was I'm going to be a doctor and this is the path I want to travel?
Well, Adam, I understand the information in 80s or 90s were very limited. You never had that kind of opportunity to even think that what your father would say or what you have seen your father doing, you would decide to deviate from that direction. So it had be a natural course of becoming a doctor. So you see your father working as a doctor, your mother working as a doctor. It's a natural course that the only option that you have would be a doctor. And I've seen this all through those years in school also, where all my colleagues who eventually became doctors, almost all of them had their parents or at least their close uncle or aunt to be a doctor.
I need to get some advice from your parents because, two of my kids think I'm really awesome and two are like, Dad, what is this house of bricks thing that you're doing? I don't even understand it. So I got to get some lessons from them of how to get the kids to buy into what you're doing. So yeah, going into the family business, obviously a very difficult field, requires, a lot of schooling. But I thought I noticed you also have your MBA as well. Is that correct?
So, I'm a cardiologist. It took me almost in India, it's how it is. It's a graduation. Unlike US, where you have a pre-med, in India, we don't have a pre-med. We have a medicine where you become a bachelor of medicine, which is called as MBBS, which is about 4.5 years of study and 1 year of internship. That's total of 5.5 years. And then you have 3 years of post-graduation, which is equivalent to residency in US. And then after the post-graduation, which is called an MD, where a lot of US doctors, you'll find, writing, their name and then MD next to it. That's what is an MD, which is same as in US, as in India. And then post that, they have another 3 years of super specialization. So almost what 5.5 plus 3 plus 3, that's about 6 plus 5.5, about 11.5 is the bare minimum that you would spend becoming a super specialist doctor. And then, there is always this challenge in India where, you will not be able to get, the seat that you aspire to, or the college that you aspire to, or the university that you aspire to. So you probably have to study a year more, get into the exam, crack the exams, and then get into. So, it took me probably 13 years to become what I am, a cardiologist. So that's a long journey. And post that, yes, when I came back, and started my practice as a cardiologist, few years, I realized that, I wanted to do more. I wanted to, contribute more to the family business that, my father was, he has his own ways, own traditional ways. I wouldn't say it wrong, but then the world had changed over years. And, that's why I realized that, though I could do it, but then in an MBA would certainly help me to do it better. It'll open my eyes to a wider world. It would, make my vision more clear. I would have the right connections, the right network, the right understanding of how a business should be. So that's the reason why I decided to, I had to go to the school, and that's when I went to Kellogg School of Management.
So I did go to school for 13 years also, and I got a high school degree. So I'm in the same boat as you. So As you know, I've started multiple businesses in different industries. I didn't go to school for healthcare, but I started a healthcare analytics business. I didn't have a technology background, but started a mobile technology company. Also played professional basketball at 32 years old. So I like to tackle the impossible things. And when I listen to your story, obviously very well educated, but you do have an entrepreneurial mindset just from my interactions with you. And I know your wife, has her own business as well. A lot of doctors aren't very entrepreneurial minded just because of the risks that it takes. And they're probably too smart to start and do some of the things that and the risks that I would do. But how do you balance that mindset of the medical mind versus being an entrepreneur, and how are you able to get those two to fit together?
Adam, if you look at world over, I think it's a set, or it's probably a blessing that I have, that if I had to do entrepreneurship in healthcare, and I'm particularly in hospitals, that I'm blessed to be a doctor. Why? Because if you even go by the data, you look at data of Mayo School, or the top universities, the health universities or hospitals, John Hopkins and stuff like that in US, you will always find, and this debate can go anywhere, that you'll always find the top guys to be doctors as the presidents or the vice presidents. Even they're not the MBAs who are leading the race, and the reason is healthcare, hospital particularly, is business that is run with a heart. You can't be just a finance guy, just tackling numbers, or looking at patient as products. You'll always have to look at patients as patients, with empathy, with compassion, and that certainly I think is would probably be more if you are a doctor at the helm of the affairs. So I think it's a blessing that I became a doctor and then got into the business of healthcare.
And so for our listeners out there that are in a family business, it sounds like you and your dad have a great working relationship. I'm sure there's challenges, but any learnings that you had along the way that helped you guys develop that type of working relationship? Because family and business can create a lot of challenges also. I mean, it's very muddy with the personal family and then the business relationship. What were some of the challenges that the two of you faced, and how did you work through them?
So I had a massive challenge. Times my dad won't even talk to me for days together. He will think that I would finish off all the business that he's created over 3 decades. He would even tell me times that you go away. Why are you just spoiling my business? But then I realized that the important aspect of any business, any two people working together, it's exactly the same that you would do with your father or mother if you work together, and that is the communication, the right communication. So I understood that perspectives can be different. The way if you look at this one, you've heard of that Tibetan monks saying, when they look at an elephant, it is everybody has a different perspective depending on which side are they looking. Someone who's looking at the elephant from below versus someone who's looking at the elephant from top versus from the front or the back, they'll all be looking at the elephant, yet they will be coming up with a different definition of what an elephant would look like. Someone would say they have a long nose. Someone would say it's like a tail, or someone would say they have pillars like legs. So I realized that I had to understand his perspective, which was very, very important. And I thought everything that I did or said was right, which obviously I realized I had to communicate why and why. There was always this why which I had to communicate to him. If the communication was right, then he would eventually step back. But don't expect your father or your mother to step back from the day you get in. That's what I did. I did the wrong way. I decided, no, you know what? I am the highly educated cardiologist here, and who's spent so many years, and here I am bringing in a change in few days, which obviously won't happen. He wouldn't step back because he's done it all his life. So if you need the space to work freely, you will have to get into his close circle. You will have to get the trust that he needs from you, and that would take its own time. And communication, the day you decide that the communication is not intact or the communication is not direct, that's when a lot of family business collapse. thankfully for me, over years, now he's kind of stepped back. And the other thing that we've also learned is that, division of labor, a simple sense, what work he does, I don't, get into that work, and what I do, he doesn't get into that. So we've clearly defined our work. I've let him do the negotiation part, or getting in new machines, stuff like that, or and I do the rest of the growth part, and the operation part and stuff like that, or the newer businesses. So I think that also is very important. And my father is 73, 74 now, and he doesn't want to step back. And I see a lot of people who've worked all their life. They don't want to step back from the business that they've created. So you need that space. You would have to give them some space.
So, family or not, what you're talking about is really good, right? It's communication, putting the right people in the right seats on the bus. I've learned this over time, not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? So recognizing people's skills and strengths, leaning into those strengths, and then building the right team around you. That's been the key to my success for 25 years. Is I'm very, very good at the 5% that 99% of the people in the world can't do. If you follow that math, I'm the 1%. And then finding the right people around you that can, do the blocking and tackling that creates the space for you to cast vision and continue to lead the company. So recognizing skills, communication, it's great, and especially important when family's involved. And so with your dad, when you entered into the family business, did he say, hey, great job, Rajat, in getting your degree, but you're emptying the trash cans for the first 3 years here? Or did you kind of move in at a higher level? I mean, I know you came in as a doctor, but you understand the point. Did you have to work your way up the system, or did you come in at a higher level than other doctors?
No, it is. Though I was certainly a privileged one, very few doctors in the country would have a hospital backup. But then the way up was extremely, extremely difficult and extremely challenging. And, the expectations were very, very high, being the owner's son. And, again, not getting the space was another challenge. But, it took me I would say almost 5 years to even, get into the position of decision making, so it takes its own good time, sweet spot to get into that space.
And so enough about you. I'm going to talk about the real important member of your family, your wife. I see her on Facebook and LinkedIn, and she's doing something amazing there. And I've just seen great story after great story. Can you tell us what she's doing and the impact that she's making?
So, Gauri, we got married back in 2010, and we came back to work after my cardiology residency in 2013, and that's when she came back to Delhi, and then she started her own IVF clinic. And again, she had a similar challenge. Because my mother is a gynecologist, and she had her own busy practice. She's a very popular gynecologist in this part of the country. She wanted to make her space. She was desperate enough to make her space, and she realized that she couldn't get anything in the hospital. And from the day one, she wanted to do something of her own. And she would go to small periphery hospitals or clinics, and she would start her practices from there. And that's when she became she picked up things very, very quickly, and she started having a huge following. And I remember back in 2015, we started our first IVF clinic in southern part of Delhi, which is the most I would say where all the rich people of Delhi live. That's where she started her clinic, and now she has about 18 clinics of her own across north of India, and she started one in Muscat a few months back, and looking to start the next one in Dubai. So she had a difficult, beginning. I would say a challenging one, but then she was clear that she wanted to start her own, and diverged in that direction very, very quickly. So, and you can see now, if you look at her as a doctor, I would say she's one of the most popular doctor in the country, and she has a huge following, as an IVF specialist in the country.
So tell us about the clinic and what it's specifically doing, what the business does, and like who are your clients? Are you kind of working or patients with anyone, or is it a high end privilege that people have to work with her?
So IVF is in vitro fertilization. A lot of people call it test tube baby also in a more simpler language. Why it is important is, if you look at the data, there are about 15 to 17% of parents, parents who are who are intending to have a baby, not able to have a baby. So when you look at India's population, of a 1.4 billion population today, and probably if I would say about 20% of them are couples intending to have a baby at some point of time. And if you look at those 20%, if you go by 15% of those 20%, you're still looking at a massive population here who intend to have baby and not having a baby. So it's a huge disease, to have. And there is a huge, unlike a lot of Western countries, in India, not having a baby is a huge social stigma to women, particularly to married women, and it is always the woman to be blamed. So even if the man has some issue or the husband has some issue, it will always be the woman to be blamed in the family, their mother-in-laws, their father-in-law, or even the relatives. Sometimes let's say they meet in a party, and they questioning, oh, look at her, she's unable to have a baby, and then using things or saying things that they shouldn't be saying, and it's extremely hurtful. It is a lot of people even having divorces because the woman is unable to conceive, or whatever, the couple is unable to conceive. They're having divorces, their in-laws telling them to move away or live somewhere else. uh, People going into depression, psychosis, anxiety issues, stuff like that, and they've been actually being out, as an outcast from the society. They're not even accepted in their own relatives. But let's say our relatives have to get together, you're not even accepted because you like, oh, she probably would pass on the same genes or something to other members in the family. So that's how bad the social stigma of not having to conceive, or having not having a child has become in the society. Though we are extremely forward looking society if you look at today, but that some of these things which have gone from our history are still very, very susceptible, or very, very, you can actually feel it into our society on a daily basis. When you meet people in as couples, and if they don't have a baby, you tend to have that feeling, okay, there's something missing. It's never that they decided not to have a baby, it's always that they were unable to have a baby. So what Gauri is doing, if she, so it's a huge, I would say, service that she's doing to these couples.
Yeah, and I know just from our conversations and just culturally, the family unit in India is everything, right? So being able to have children, grandparents, like the whole family unit is a representation of really who you are, and just that ability to have children and so forth. And so what a rewarding profession, right? It probably doesn't even feel like a job. I mean, the ability to, create that opportunity for families, and especially, the things that you talked about in India. Do you keep track of how many success stories she's had?
Oh, the only way I get to know a success story is when I see it on the Facebook or the LinkedIn or Instagram. She likes putting up a lot of pictures on the social media, and a lot of these parents who come with their babies, and then they're expressing their gratitude towards her. And I think the gratitude, or the the how thankful they are, I think that's what keeps her going. It is certainly not the money which is the driving force. It is the love that she gets. I you know In India, sometimes, and it is how it is, and you can imagine what importance the kids have into our family, into our lives. I have seen parents So we when we go to the god, when you go to our temples, we bend down and we literally thank God for whatever we are, and that's for how we pray. So they coming and literally touching your feet, like you touch we touch our feet of our elders, to take their blessings. That's how they look at her as a doctor. They're literally relating her to God, to because she was the one who was able to give them, what was so precious or what was so important to them.
Helping create life, extend family into multiple generations. So that's just super inspiring to hear and well deserved because you both are great people. So as you know, the House of Bricks podcast, right? We're teaching people how to use life's experiences for them. Seems like you've had a great path to get to where you are today. What is the biggest challenge that you've experienced along the way? Maybe something that you wanted to happen that didn't happen. And now that you look back, you're happy that it didn't happen. It led to something better. So give us an experience that you viewed as a negative at the time and how you use that to propel you in your career.
So the one that immediately comes to my mind is, we had we started one hospital, and we had some regulatory issues, and that is back in 2017, I remember. And I joined my MBA at that point of time, and we had started a hospital, and it couldn't really take off because of regulatory challenges. And I remember I had invested a lot of money into that, and I remember it took me 1 year, to get all those, to clear up all the regulatory challenges, and we had to invest a lot of money to do a lot of architectural changes. So what I learned was, during that 1 year, you need to, whenever you do something, you cannot be dependent on people outrightly. You will have to do a lot of things by your own self. You will have to read. You will have to understand. You will have to ask. You will have to, you meet the experts to do a lot of things. Don't expect your uncles, your close friends would give you the right advice. So always meet the right experts, to understand how things are. I failed at that point of time because I did not, I depended on people who I should not have depended. So, that was one big lesson I learned. And that 1 year was very, and I'm thankful that 1 year happened, because it taught me to do things that I thought it was not my job. So I realized that there was nothing that was not your job. When you're an entrepreneur, everything is your own job. You cannot be dependent on people. It is your job. You have to get it correct. You will have to be party to it. You cannot be dependent on some person to do the job. Otherwise, you will certainly fail. So, if starting a new business, starting a new hospital, do it yourself, learn it yourself, be involved into it. And I didn't do that. So that's a big lesson. Also, 1 year when this whole thing was happening, and when I was doing nothing, I realized one very important thing that I was learning in MBA, and that was networking. And we as doctors are extremely poor networkers. And there was one thing that I learned. There were three things that MBA. When they talk about networking, they always talk about three important aspects of networking, and which is diversity, one, and the second is the trust, and the third is the warmth in the relationship. And all these things I actually felt I utilized it in my favor, what I was learning at that point of time. And I met the right people to understand how things were. I met the right people in the administration to network so that my things could go off. And that was my turning point of my life. Though it was terrible, I would say. That 1 year was extremely terrible, but the learning was massive. And I think if that wouldn't have happened, I would have probably not been able to build up 3 hospitals today, and going to the fourth one very, very soon. And it is that turning point in my life, that difficult turning point, that that changed the whole thing.
So to play that back for our audience as well, and I've found some of those same pillars really in my success as an entrepreneur. I was a 20-year-old kid when I started. It didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to do it. I wanted to win. I wanted to be successful. But one thing I did do early on is surrounding myself with an advisory board. They say wisdom is found in the counsel of many. And so you can't get experience through a book. You can read it, you can learn about it, you can talk about it, but until you live it, you're not really embracing and understanding the knowledge that you're reading and gaining until you actually implement it into a business, make decisions, read, react, and then continue to make progress. And so getting yourself a group of people that you trust, people that are where you want to be or have gone through what you're going through, they have that experience to help you get to where you want to be and get you through your current situation. So surrounding yourself with a group of advisors, it doesn't have to be a formal advisory board, but meeting people that have experience in whatever you're trying to accomplish. The second thing, life is not really about what you know, but it's who you know. And so building the right relationships with people, not with the intent of your own benefit, but being able to serve them, add value. And then the more you give, the more you'll eventually receive back. And so those are two great points for people out there to listen to. And so I think back to when you and I met the first time. It was in Dubai. We couldn't pick a better place to meet at the Burj Al Arab, a 6-star hotel. Incredible place. I still pinch myself sometimes to think that. I remember putting, I think I had to put down a $20,000 deposit just on the iPad in the room. It was 24 karat gold. So great experience, and it was great to meet you there. So our purpose in being there was to talk about legacy. And you're in a family business now, family unit, very important in your culture. And for you as a family, what do you view as the most important parts that you've received from your parents? Because as a dad, I know I want my ceiling to be the kid, be my children's floor that they're able to build from, right? I want them to learn through their own experience, but also leverage all the hard work and accomplishments that I've had to help them get to a higher level. So what have you received in terms of legacy from your parents, and what are some of the things that you're thinking about for your kids as you continue to build and grow your family?
What I learned from my father in terms of what he's taught me, his teachings, which was sometimes direct and sometimes more of times indirect, was one has to be extremely humble. One has to be humble. One has to have a huge gratitude towards everyone in form of your people who've worked under you or people who are above you. So that kind of gratitude, the sense of gratitude, is very, very important. So that's what I teach my kids. You have to be gratitude. You have to have the right gratitude. Have to say that real thank you to the person who's working for you, your maid in the house. We all have maids in India. You're aware, and you're the one who's the cook for you. So the people like them who are not really bringing a huge change in your life, but when you have the sense of gratitude towards those people, that's when you would have a gratitude towards all the people that you helped. So I learned huge. I learned this from my father, that the sense of gratitude is extremely important. You have to be kind. You have to be humble with everyone. And, I think that's what, keeps me going. Giving and taking in a relationship, I think it is always the giving first, and then, not expecting anything in return. We've all, a lot of us in India have read this from Gita, that, you give and then don't expect anything in return. And I think that is what has motivated me. What has worked in my favor is, you give as much as you can, and then things would this is all universe is rotating, the earth is rotating. So it's going to eventually come back to you. All the right energies, if you utilize, are all going to come back to you. Other than what, he's the business that he's created, and, the business that we are expanding. I think I want to leave these things into my kids' memory and their behavior and their personalities. That is what I think would be my achievement, my winning, if they have the right attitude, if they have the right personality towards life.
In addition to that, with legacy, you've talked about kind of some of the things that you've inherited, not just the business, right? But how to live life. Are your intentions for your children to continue into the family business, or is it whatever they decide to do? Hey, go to boarding school, do what you want to do, or is it kind of set in stone that they're going to join the family business?
So, I really don't know how long I'm going to carry this business. Over the years, our way of doing businesses have changed. So it's a difficult one. But then I would have, I always tell my kids, do what you love to do, and love what you're doing. Enjoy the whole experience. Don't look at the destination. If you're playing tennis, enjoy the whole, aspect of it. Don't look at winning or losing. And you don't think of, doctors is not that you ought to become. It's, your choice, what you want to do. You want to stay here. You want to, work somewhere abroad in a different country. You want to, whatever you like, it's your life, but be happy in whatever you're doing, enjoy the whole that this is what we never learned ourselves. This is the whole journey. The enjoyment of the journey was never taught to us. We always looked at, okay, now I have to look at the destination. So I always tell them, look at the journey. You want to become a footballer, you want to play soccer, go do it. You want to do tennis. My son is just started learning golf, and he's like, I want to be a golfer. I said, go ahead, be a good golfer, enjoy the play, the golf. My daughter is doing shooting, and she's she's 8, and she started playing tennis now. And she's I want to I want to represent India in tennis. I said, go ahead and do that. Why not? I will support you in whatever way I want to. But then obviously some amount of studies and some amount of education is obviously important. But then it is up to them. I have nothing for them. To follow our footsteps in those things.
Two things on what you said there. First of all, what fun is in losing? So you do have to win. So no, that's a personality thing for me, but I love to win. I know you're a competitive guy too. But the second thing you said is really the foundation of our podcast. And the reason I'm able to talk about it is I spent a good part of my entrepreneurial career, like you said, focusing on the win. And for me, it wasn't about the money, although that was a great reward. But once you reach the top of a mountain, you look down and there's another valley. So you're going to go through that same process again. And so when you exit that business, a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, they're focused on getting that goal. Oh, once I sell my business, I'll be happy. Or once I get this award, I'll be happy. And I missed a lot of the joys in the learning, in the process, that now I want to meet other entrepreneurs that are where I was and saying, there's something you can learn every day, and you can enjoy and embrace the failures and use them for you to build a strong foundation instead of carrying those things with you and letting them weigh you down. And those things that you're carrying with you, they can be wins or losses. Yeah, I'm sure you've talked to these people at a party or a dinner event. They're talking about, hey, 10 years ago, I did this, 15 years ago, I did this. It's like, you need a new story. Like, where are you going? And that's really the purpose of this podcast, is not for me to talk about my previous success or you to talk about the things that you've accomplished, but how do we inspire people to get to where it is that they want to be, or where they're striving to be, and walk in that full calling and their full identity. So as we close here today, I want to encourage all the entrepreneurs out there, business people, CEOs, and you don't just have to have the title to be a leader. You can lead wherever you are. And not all of us are walking in our passion as an occupation, but you can use your occupation to inspire other passions and other people. So it's not that your vocation has to be what you think that you're supposed to be doing. You can use that as a means to, like I said, inspire other people, make an impact around the world. So, Dr. Arora, thank you very much for your time. Our audience, there's great words of wisdom here on family, business, legacy, healthcare, and being an entrepreneur, just to learn things outside of what's going on here in the United States, but also in India. So I want to thank you a lot for your time and appreciate your friendship, and congrats to you and your wife and your family.
Thank you, Adam, for having me over. See you sometime soon. Thank you.
I will see you in Dubai. It's a reason for me to go to the Burj Al Arab again. So
let me know when you're there.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Were there other things that you considered, or was I'm going to be a doctor and this is the path I want to travel?
I wouldn't really call it a privileged opportunity. It took me probably 13 years to become a cardiologist. That's a long journey. 6 plus 5.5, about 11.5 is the bare minimum that you would spend becoming a super prestigious doctor. So you see your father working as a doctor, your mother working as a doctor. It's a natural course that the only option that you have would be a doctor. The expectations were very, very high.
Going into the family business, I noticed you also have your MBA. Your wife has her own business as well.
She's one of the most popular doctors in the country. Parents who come with their babies and then they're expressing their gratitude towards her. I always tell my kids, do what you love to do. The day you decide that the communication is not intact or the communication is not direct, that's when a lot of family business collapse.
The first time it was in Dubai. We couldn't pick a better place to meet at the Burj Al Arab, a 6-star hotel. I think I had to put down a $20,000 deposit just on the iPad in the room. It was 24 karat gold. Great experience, and it was great to meet you there.
You're starting a new business, do it yourself, learn it yourself, be involved into it. And I didn't do that, so that's a big lesson. I would have the right connections, the right network, the right understanding of how a business should be.